In this video, we're going to focus on the hip flexors and the adductors. Think about the motion when you sprint. Your hip flexors are working so hard, especially in this high knee position. So not only do they need to have the ability to contract with power as you bring the knee up, but also control the leg as it extends behind your body. So you need to be strong in both the short ranges and the long ranges. Now let's talk about the groins or the adductors. Think about Lionel Messi, arguably the greatest player ever. What does he do better than everyone? It's his ability to drop the shoulder, send defenders the wrong way and change direction. But he's not just dropping the shoulder, he's realistically dropping the hips. So when you think about it, your groins need to have the ability to contract in that short range and explode off as you change direction. Now, when you're weak in those areas, not only are you more likely to get injured, but you're also putting a limit on your performance. You're not going to be able to change direction as fast. You're definitely not going to be able to sprint as fast. But when you start building strength in those long ranges, that is when you're going to unlock your true athletic potential. But before you work into the long ranges, it's a good idea to own the short ranges first. This is initially what's going to get the tissue firing up again. It's going to put blood flow into the area to start the healing process. The standard I set for myself to work up to was 10 Copenhagen planks, lifting the hips off the floor, controlling them back down to the ground, engaging the adductors at the top. And what makes this a short range exercise is the closer my hips are to the floor, the easier it gets. This is the hardest point of the exercise, when my adductors are in that shortened range. But I didn't start there. I started just simply with my feet on the wall, putting a foam roller between my legs and just gently squeezing to get the tissue firing up again. Once that started to feel easier, then I progressed in the sideline adductor hold, keeping the bottom leg straight, lifting it off the floor, and your adductors are now working to keep that leg off the ground, building up the 30-second hold. Once that got easier, I went knee on bench, Copenhagen, initially starting in the shorter range, starting to stretch the tissue a little bit, increasing my range, and then working my way down the bench. So knee on bench is easier, foot on bench is the hardest variation for the Copenhagen planks. To get my hip flexors strong in the short range, I set myself a standard of 10 kettlebell hip flexor raises with 10% of my body weight, keeping my lower back pressed onto the bench, bringing the knee up and controlling the foot as we extend. And if you look, this is the exact same movement pattern that your legs and hips go into when you sprint. But I didn't start with that variation. I had to build up. I started here sitting on a bench, raising the knee, holding for a few seconds, controlling it back down to the floor. And at the time, that was enough to get my hip flexors firing up. Then eventually, I started working in the extending the leg, the lockout, bringing it back in. Once again, setting the target of working up to 10 reps with complete control, especially as you kick the leg out, nice and slow on the way out, on the way back in. Then when you feel ready, start adding some light load. Even if you're starting off with like a 1-2 kilo kettlebell, that's completely fine. Over time, you're working up to that 10% of your body weight target. Once you've built up that baseline of tolerance, then we can start to safely work into the longer ranges, and that is when the real bulletproofing begins. We're going to start off with a seated good morning. Not only is this going to strengthen the glutes, going to strengthen the hamstrings, but it's also going to improve your hips ability. What you're going to do is sit on the edge of the bench, keep your knees nice and wide, keep your feet in front of your knees, then lift your chest up and you're just going to slowly bring your chest towards the floor. Now, most important, you're only going as low as you can while keeping the back straight. So you should be like this at the bottom of the rep, not like this. So with every rep, I'm focusing on stretching out the groins. The lower you get, you'll start to feel the stretch get deeper. But this can be confusing at times to know if you're keeping your back straight or not, especially if you're kind of just training by yourself and you don't have a coach. So a good way to test this is you're going to do the exact same movement, but just keep the bench at an incline. If your back is straight, you're going to feel your stomach touch the bench first, okay? So you're always thinking stomach the bench. If you have a rounded back, then you're going to hit it with your chin, shoulders, chest. So got to keep working on keeping that back engaged, keeping the knees nice and wide, touching the bench with your stomach, and back up again. To strengthen the hip flexors in the long range, I used an ATG split squat, working to keep that rear knee off the floor while bringing this knee over the toe, keeping the chest up and the hips forward. And as you can see, that's really getting the hip flexors into a deep stretch. But when I started this exercise, I had to start with my front foot elevated, even holding on to something for balance if needed, just working through your natural range of motion. If you're a bit tighter, it's better to stop here while keeping your chest up than trying to get too deep, ending up like this, okay? So the goal is to bring the knee over the toe, but only while we keep our posture nice and tall. Even if you're, say, stopping here, the more reps you do over time, you're gonna start to improve on that ability to get the knee over the toe more. And one way I always like to look at it is, if I'm on a certain elevation, I should be able to completely cover this calf with the hamstring while staying tall before I go lower. So the lower you obviously get to getting that lead leg to the floor, the more mobility is going to be. But at the same time, the more you can improve these ranges, it's going to improve your athleticism in general, your ability to jump, run fast, change direction. Your performance levels will only improve. Hopefully this made a bit of sense today. The problem with most footballers is they think that their issues are just down to a bit of tightness, but without realizing the tightness is just a symptom. It's a symptom of your weaknesses and imbalances. But once you work on evening them out, the tightness will go away. What I've done is put together a free hip assessment. It's just got a couple of questions and it's going to give you a few pointers on how to start strengthening in the areas that you're at your weakest. And you can grab that in the description below.